sports.
And you are the Dana White,
Dana Black.
Dana Black.
That's very much the goal. That's the goal. Like we, looking at the global combat sports landscape.
Yeah.
The North America has the UFC. Asia has one championship, and Africa has African Warriors. So that's really the goal, is building this into a global powerhouse, celebrating traditional African combat sports.
Yeah. Hello casuals, you're welcome to the Casual Experience Show, where we give you exciting MMA news and updates. And on today's episode, we have a big fish. Someone that has decided that he's going to venture and bring out the knowledge in the sport and the act of Dambe. Maxwel Kalu, the CEO and the founder of African Warriors Fighting Championship. You're welcome, bro.
Thank you for having me.
And before the production, we've been talking a lot, and you've been giving me so much insight into Dambe, and I've been seeing your passion exude. But I know a lot of our audience and many people outside there, they just see two people fighting. I want to ask, what is Dambe and what's the act of?
So Dambe is traditional boxing native to northern Nigeria. It was born out of spear and shield warfare. So that's why one hand is wrapped, that's called the spear, signifies a spear. And then the unwrapped hand is called the shield, signifying a shield.
The shield.
So you use your wrapped hand for punching, and you block with your unwrapped hand. And then you can kick with both legs also.
Yeah.
So Dambe, it started as a way to prepare for warfare.
Yes.
As you can see in terms of the terms that are used.
Yeah.
And then over the years, it now progressed, it turned into a pastime where young men would compete to prove their manliness, win prizes. Apparently, you could even win a wife. That's how it just, over the years, it now transformed into the most popular traditional sport, especially in northern Nigeria.
Yeah.
Which I think is very cool. It comes from warfare, has its roots in warfare. And now you have these modern day warriors, if you will, still honoring that tradition when they fight.
Okay, but for you, what made you venture into it? Like, it's I won't call it an unknown sport, but it's not a sport that it's exciting when you see it and when you look at it. But for the casuals, as you know how what our show is, we don't know are there rules? Is it regulated?
Yeah, so I mean, to answer the first part in terms of why, for me, I see a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So I've always been a huge combat sports fan. I started combat sports when I was very young. I did karate, I kickbox, I still box to this day. So I've always been a huge fan. That was my sort of starting point.
Yeah.
And then what now happened is African Warriors allows me to sort of showcase or sort of be a fan, but at the same time add my commercial mind to it. And I think it really started in like 2016 when the UFC was sold, and that big sort of deal around then, right? Company bought for $2 million in 2001, sold for $4 billion in 2016.
Yes.
And I just remember looking at this, scratching my head, saying, man, just like, and it was just from there that it started. So I was in London at the time, fully based in London, and I said, I'm going to start something. And especially I was seeing Africa, and I was thinking, what's our place in this? Because we're contributing all of this talent in terms of fighters that are competing across every combat sport, and in many cases are champions in multiple combat sports, right? And I was like, we have the raw talent, the raw skill for this. And when you're thinking about Nigeria, more broadly Africa, I'm thinking about the population power.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the interest we have in sport generally.
Yeah.
So for me, it just made sense. So initially, it was going to be an MMA organization, right?
Yeah.
And I get to Nigeria, and I'm spending time just understanding the scene. And I think even since then, right, 2016 versus now, Nigeria's MMA scene, combat sport scene has grown massively.
Yes.
Things like this podcast are testament to that.
Yeah.
So I'm just going around Lagos mainly, and I'm just trying to understand what's on ground. And it's funny, it was an Uber guy who started the whole thing. So it was this Uber guy who had been taking me around. I was like, oh, you like this fighting stuff, right? I said, yes. He said, okay, I'll show you something. So he took me to go and watch Dambe. And this was my first ever time seeing Dambe, right?
What year was that?
This was 2016.
Wow.
It's my first ever time watching Dambe. No, not 2016, sorry. This was a bit later, maybe 2018. 2016 was the UFC deal, right? And so I go and I'm just blown away. I'm seeing all of the pageantry around Dambe. So you're seeing, the drums beating, the musicians singing, the fighters who are in this like trance-like state, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and then on top of it, you've got knockouts, you've got kicks, you have all of this energy. And I was just like, this is it. And right there, and this was in like a bus garage, right? But right there, I was like, this is going to be the thing. This is going to be the sport that I build an organization on.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was the starting point.
Did you understand it? Your first, when you go there, did you understand what was happening? I mean,
so I understood it. And this is why I love about combat sports, right? So American football, for example, to this day, I have no idea what's going on, right? Yeah. But you don't need anybody to explain the rules to you when you're watching a fight.
Yes.
It's very simple. Two men are facing off and they're both trying to knock each other out.
Yeah.
They are trying to prove themselves. They're trying to represent their cities, their states, their countries, wherever they come from. And it's as simple as that.
Yes.
And everybody understands that.
Yeah.
So I remember, funnily enough, I couldn't understand the music, right? The singing, which is a huge part of Dambe.
Yeah.
And so the musicians are singing and I'm seeing how the fighters are responding to it, taking it so seriously. And I remember saying to guy I'm with, I'm like, what are they singing? And he's like, they're singing, the time for killing has come. Don't worry, if you die, we'll take you home to your village and bury you. And I was like, dude, this is it. You know what I mean? Like, this is it. This is the energy that we need. This is something that for me is this beautiful sweet spot in terms of combat sports, in terms of African culture, tradition, at a perfect time for combat sports. So that was it. That's how I got hooked. And then it's funny, after seeing it for the first time, I then went down a bit of a rabbit hole. And my I'm Igbo from the southeast of Nigeria, but my dad and his family all grew up in the north.
Yeah.
So when I was like, oh, Dad, have you heard about it? He's like, yeah, I used to watch it growing up. So I then was able to sort of trace it back to the north and go and see it in the north, which is always at a bigger scale than it is in Lagos. So yeah, it was meant to happen, if you will.
So how was the exposure and the reception like?
Yeah, it's so it took some time. It took some time, and because what you need to understand, right, is I didn't create Dambe. I would love to be able to sit here and say that, but I'm not a creator of Dambe. I'm a stakeholder now, and my organization is giving athletes a platform and is giving a platform to the business, to the sport and culture of Dambe.
Yeah.
But you have people who have been in this sport for years, for decades. So you have custodians, be it the people who run the small Gidan Dambe houses, be it the athletes, be it the musicians. There's an entire ecosystem around it.
Yeah.
So the first thing we needed to do was to go and key into that ecosystem, go and introduce ourselves, have them understand who we are, what we're about, understand the value add that we're offering them, and understand that we are a partner to it. We ultimately want to be and give these boys, these young men who are coming from these communities, a better platform to compete.
Yeah.
And that platform comes with new opportunities, new rewards.
Yeah.
Meeting, growing your audience, your fan base around the world.
Yeah.
Financial rewards, allowing these fighters who mainly fight for, ultimately they're prize fighters, right?
Yeah.
They are fighting because they want money. Sort of expanding the prize pool, health and safety, actually ensuring that we have ambulances on ground, ensuring things like fighters have mouth guards, all of these things just to ensure.
Is there a commission? Like
there's a traditional sports federation.
Really?
There's traditional sports federation. There's also arts and culture federation. So we have great relationships with traditional sports, with arts and culture, and also the sports commission.
Yeah.
But I think as with many things in Nigeria, innovation doesn't come from government.
Yeah.
Right. So although you have certain stakeholders in place, and they've been good to us, we're the innovators here.
Yeah.
And we're the people that, you asked earlier if there's regulation in the sport. We have been the trailblazers in terms of introducing regulation to the sport. Because ultimately, if this is going to be a sport that's going to go as far as we want, and we see Dambe being a global combat sports product.
Yeah.
That's what we're pushing for. That's what we are crafting this business into. So ultimately, one of the first things we had to do was come in and actually articulate the rule set. And that's not to say that there wasn't any rules. No, certainly not. There were rules in terms of what you can strike with, as I said, your wrapped hand, blocking with your unwrapped hand, kicks, or everything. But just in terms of articulating that rule set, sort of making sure that things like round times are in place.
Yeah.
So in African Warriors fights, you have 3 5-minute rounds. Okay. So for us, it was just coming in, working with the community, not imposing ourselves on the community, but working with the community to have them understand, who we are, what we're doing. And that took some time. And bear in mind, I'm not from the north. I'm not from northern Nigeria. So, people were at some points looking like, who is this guy? And sort of, you walk into a Dambe arena in Kanu speaking with an English accent and you're like, where did this guy come from? But very, very quickly we were able to get the community on side. And, we have great relationships to this day that have been very much been the bedrock of what we've been able to do so far.
Yeah. So for the fighters, did I call them fighters?
We refer to them as warriors.
Warriors. Okay. For the warriors, how are they? What's the model? Now that you're trying to build a proper structure for the act of Dambe fighting. How are they selected? How do you know that this is going to be? And when I was watching a couple of documentaries, one of the documentaries said they named themselves after deadly diseases. One was called coronavirus.
That's my guy. That's my boy.
Yes.
Ebola.
Ebola.
Yes.
So
yes.
Now, is it the way they look, because they look physically imposing?
Yeah. I mean, look, look at MMA. How many fighters do you have called Pitbull, right?
Yes.
I think it's a global phenomenon that fighters go by names that ultimately represent where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Or hopefully scare their opponents. Imagine you've not met this guy and you're just hearing coronavirus.
Yeah.
You said go fear. You know what I mean? So it's Corona, for example, and that's a great example. And I would definitely say anybody watching this, check out the documentary BBC documentary we did with Corona around the Emirs Cup. He is just a great example of why we're doing this.
Yeah.
So Corona is the second of 11 children. Comes from a small village in Kano State.
Okay.
Lives in a house with all of his siblings and his mum, about the size of this room that we're in now.
Yeah.
And through Dambe, he's been able to elevate his family.
Yeah.
He provides for all of his siblings through Dambe.
Wow.
So he started out, his mum didn't even want him to compete when he started. And then he was like, no, I'm gonna, this is my thing. He was just drawn to it. So he was sneaking out of the house, going to go and do it. And then he started bringing home trophies. He started bringing home money. And then his mum got behind it, started supporting it. And now he's an absolute hero in his community across northern Nigeria as well. I walked through Kano with him and people were stopping him, hailing him everywhere. And that is really a big part of what we're doing, why we're doing this.
Yeah.
It was what people don't understand, right? I think most people have seen or have heard stories about combat sports in terms of this guy comes from a rough background. If you're thinking about the archetypal American boxer, I come from the hood, I've been able to sort of get in the boxing gym, that kept me out of trouble, and now you rise through the ranks, right? What I need people to understand is the stakes where we're coming from, where our fighters are coming from, are so much higher.
Yeah.
This isn't just a dude that comes from a bad neighborhood. These are guys that are coming from some of the poorest neighborhoods in Nigeria, which by many standards, not necessarily agreed fully, but is the poverty capital of the world, right? So you're coming from backgrounds where if these guys weren't fighters, sometimes I think, what could these guys be? Sometimes I think these guys could be involved in criminal activity. These guys could be extremists. These guys could be bandits, anything like that. Yeah. But instead, these guys have channeled all of the many experiences they've had growing up into competing and to celebrating their culture as they compete.
Okay.
So it's a beautiful thing, and I didn't understand the full extent of what it would be. And, we've had so many crazy experiences. We were doing a big event once and there was a particular fighter that I was trying to, I like this guy, right? So I was like, I want him on the card.
Yeah.
And then a week before the event, we've like brought all of the fighters from the various places around Nigeria they are, and he's not there. So I said, where's this guy? Like, oh, we can't find him. What do you mean we can't find him? Like, we usually are able to, fighters normally are just difficult to manage anyway.
Yes.
Dambe fighters take that to a whole new extreme, right? Where is he? Like, where? So after asking for how many days, somebody's like, okay, he went to go and hunt in Sambisa Forest. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows when he's going to come out. So if he comes before the event, great. If not, we're going to have to move on.
Yeah.
We have to move on. So just to say, like, crazy things happen in this game,
So how the Warriors, how do they train? What's their training method? Before we started, you were saying, you kept mentioning fighting camp, and I was about to ask you, I was going to ask you during the show, is it like a gym, or do they have coaches?
Yes.
And as you said, they can be unruly, because you're trying to put them through a pathway which they've not recognized that could take them to the peak. Like someone like the coronavirus, it could be like the superstar, the one that takes this globally. But if he doesn't see the vision the way you see it, or if you can't impact it in him, how?
Yeah, I think, look, I don't think that's unique to Nigeria.
Yeah.
I think, look at the UFC, for example, right?
Yes.
You have, over 600 fighters on the roster, and you have only one Conor McGregor. You have only one
John Jones.
You have only one, let's see how he turns out, Ila Topuria, right? So, and by that, I mean that not everybody gets it on the highest of levels.
Yeah.
Some guys just want to fight. You know what I mean? He doesn't even want too much drama. He doesn't particularly care about being a big name.
Yeah.
He just likes fighting, right? So you have a range of personalities. Somebody like Corona, for example, is a great example of he gets it. He's easy to work with. He's a showman. After he knocks people out, he dances over them. He's just a nice guy. He's kind. You want to see him win. We did an event last year where we featured the first ever white fighter to compete in Dambe, Luke Leyland.
Yeah.
This was a big deal. He came all the way from the UK, competed against Shag on Yellow in Katsina, 10,000 people live watching it. And Luke, he came and he lost, but he gave a great account of himself. But Corona really stood out to me around that, because Corona really took him under his wing in terms of their Dambe houses. I'm not sure if you saw this in your research, but Dambe is just speaking to the culture of the sport.
Yeah.
There's a house system. And what you mean by that is, depending on where you're born in Nigeria, you are born into a house.
Okay.
So the three houses are Kudu, Gurumada, and Arawa. So if you're born in the northwest, if you're born in north central, if you're born in northeast, you're in one of those houses, depending on where. So what that means is that's how matches are made.
Yeah.
So two fighters from the same house are considered brothers. They never fight. Never. If you like, bring 10 million naira, they will not do it. They just, it's a taboo. Two brothers cannot fight. So you have this house, and this is just speaking to the culture of the sport, in that how it works is you're almost adopted into that house as a young man, a young boy even. So you have guys, I'm talking 10 years old, who they're just errand boys for the fighters in their house. So they spend so many years studying the game, just watching, understanding, running around, doing errands for the senior fighters.
The fighters guide them.
Senior fighters guide them. Then eventually they come to maturity and they start fighting.
Yeah.
So you have these guys that, somebody could be 25, but he could have been fighting since he was 10. You know what I mean? Like, he's been in the system, fighting since he was a very young guy. I think the most similar system to it is Thailand, Muay Thai, in terms of, you have these really young kids who start competing on an amateur level through to becoming adults. So just the point is, right, is that house system is something really sacred and beautiful around Dambe. And Luke coming as the first ever white guy to compete, right? Total outsider. Yeah. Somebody coming, representing a whole different country. Yeah. And of all the places to come, he's coming to Katsina. It's not even like he came to like the big city, Lagos or Abuja. Yeah. He's on the edge of the Sahara Desert, competing in front of how many thousands of people.
Yeah.
But House Kudu decided they wanted him. So they requested him, House Kudawa. And so he joined House Kudawa, and I respect Luke in that he took all of the steps, and we can talk more about the religious aspect of Dambe shortly, but he very much immersed himself in it.
There's a tradition to
yes,
it.
He immersed himself in it, and Corona was led that in terms of he led the sort of House Kudawa as one of their prominent sons. He led sort of bringing him on board, very much took him under his wing, very much trained with him, worked with him as he tried to sort of get to grips with Dambe before competing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so many beautiful aspects to it. I think you might just see Dambe and just see two guys on sand trying to knock each other out.
Yeah.
But there's so much more at play. And it's my job, it's our job as African warriors to have you understand that.
So in structuring it, are there weight classes?
Yes, so part of what we've done is introduce weight classes.
Okay.
So we have 3 weight classes currently: lightweight, middle, heavyweight. So for us, this is
Lightweight,
middleweight, heavyweights. Those are the three categories we have. And for us, this is just part of our commitment in terms of, as I said, sort of just packaging and sanitizing it. And it's a hard balance to strike, right? Because I get a lot of the time people saying to me, people don't quite understand what we're doing.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, look, you just need to, you're going to put this in a ring. You just need to package it up. You need to turn it into MMA. And I'm like, no. This isn't MMA.
No.
This isn't boxing.
Yeah.
This is something totally different. It's syncs with them as a combat sport, but this is its own sport. You don't go over to Japan and tell sumo wrestlers they need to turn it into WWE.
True.
That's not what we do here.
No.
So there have definitely been things in terms of production value, in terms of standards, setting of standards. So weight class is one of them. We have what we call the AWFC rule set, so just articulating the full rule set properly. I mentioned round times, I've mentioned health and safety.
And the wraps. And
exactly, yeah. So for us, it's anything we can do to, one, ensure the health and safety of the fighters better.
Yeah.
Because these guys, Dambe fighters are fighting on average 5 times a week. That's what people don't get. Like, the reason that you were asking about the training.
Yeah.
So we have, they do all the standard training in terms of, shadow boxing, jogging, weights. Some guys take it more seriously than others. But the edge most Dambe fighters have is just the sheer amount of fighting they do. Okay. So if you compare it to a boxer or to an MMA fighter, where, you're fighting 2-3 times a year, that it's night and day for a Dambe fighter. Dambe fighters traditionally are nomadic.
Yeah.
So they move around camps or stadiums, Gidan Dambe houses, and they fight. So wherever they're requested, the fans from Sokoto might say, Corona, we want to see you fight.
Okay.
He'll come over. He'll stay there for 2 weeks just fighting. When it gets dry there, or when he gets bored, or when he wants to move on to a different challenge, he'll go to Kanu. From Kanu, he'll go to Lagos. So that's how it is. The system is fighters traveling around Nigeria competing. And that is the training in itself. Just the sheer amount of hours you put into competing day in, day out.
Okay.
And that's how you get a complete Dambe fighter.
Do women participate?
No. So this is something that's asked a lot. And it's something that, we're working on. But the ultimate truth is Dambe comes from northern Nigeria, which is steeped heavily in tradition.
Yes.
So traditionally, women didn't fight. Women don't fight.
Yeah.
Women usually come as spectators. But yes, traditionally, Dambe fighters are male. That's not to say that won't change in the future, but it's just working in a way with the community that makes sense for the communities that we work with, and ensuring it's respectful of their traditions and culture.
Okay. So for you and the African Warrior Fighting Championship, how have you been going about the globalization of the recognition of Dambe internationally?
Yeah, I mean, the globalization of Dambe is our key driving force.
Yeah.
We see Dambe being a global sensation.
Yeah.
And how we've gone about it today has just been through content, just trying to do something different, just trying to introduce and showcase content in the best possible ways, having audiences all over the world. And if you're a guy who likes fighting in New York, you'll probably like Dambe. And we've seen that very
Yes.
quickly, that we have huge international fan bases. I remember talking to my social media guy because I kept on seeing Portuguese comments on our content.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, what's happening here? Like, because I'm just seeing like Portuguese
Yeah, that
everywhere.
was it.
Like, we haven't done any ads or anything. We
Yeah.
haven't done anything to reach anybody in Portugal.
Yeah.
But it quickly showed that we have a big audience coming out of Brazil.
Yes.
In the same way, we have a big audience coming out of the States. Why?
Yes.
Because those are the big markets for combat sports. And that's what I really want people to understand is, if you like boxing, if you like MMA, you probably will like Dambe.
Yes.
And research shows actually that combat sports fans are the most likely to watch multiple things next to each other.
Yes.
So it just means that we have this huge audience. It's an estimated 550 million global combat sports fans. And that's the audience we're going after.
Yeah. And talking about liking Dambe, I've been watching it, but when I knew you were coming, I intense my watch time and my research on it. I want to ask a curious question as a fan. I might be wrong. Do fighters of opposite stance fight?
Yes, yes.
Because it seems that one particular arm is wrapped, and it's like the same arm that is wrapped on one opponent is the same hand that is wrapped on the other opponent. Like if I was a lefty, my power hand will be my wrap, right? And if my opponent is a righty,
so your hand is wrapped is just subject to which hand you're most comfortable fighting with.
yeah,
Both hands are allowed to be wrapped, but just one hand will be wrapped. So everything in Dambe has meaning and there's tradition, right? So you'll notice that the fighters have certain names.
Yeah.
Shagon is something you will
Yes.
see a lot.
Yeah.
Dogon is something you'll see a lot.
Yes.
And Bahogon is also something you'll see a lot,
Yes.
right? Bahogon means southpaw. It means left-handed.
okay.
So if your name is Bahogon Tobi, it means you are
Yeah.
a left-handed fighter.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's clarity.
Yeah. So that's it's just natural that you have some guys who are left-handed, and as is the same in boxing or MMA, it's always difficult to fight guys who are southpaws, right?
Yeah.
So there's some great southpaw guys, and it just means that whatever hand you're most comfortable fighting with.
Okay, so how do you know? Is it does the fight finish when there's a knockout? Must there be an emphatic knockout, or how do you know when the fight is done, or what's judging criteria? Are there judges?
Yes, yeah. So exactly. So this is going back to the rule set that we discussed,
Yes.
right? So traditionally, a Dambe fight would have no round times, and it would end when somebody's knocked out or somebody gives up.
Yes.
Right. And that's not really practical outside on scaling level.
Yeah.
So we have 3 3-minute rounds. We have judging criteria, aggression, skill shown, strikes landed. So heavily influenced by a boxing rule set.
Yeah.
And we have 3 judges watching, right?
Okay.
Of course, a knockout finishes a fight. So how it works is a knockdown finishes a round.
A knockdown finishes a round, even if the round isn't finished. The time hasn't elapsed.
If there's 2 minutes left in the round, if you're knocked down, if you take a knee, if you're knocked down, round is over.
Okay.
If you are that damaged that you can't continue, it's a knockout, it's a KO, fight is over.
Okay.
If not, if you go to the full 15 minutes, which is the maximum for any fight, you're judged by the amount of blows landed, by the
Okay.
aggression, by control of the arena, etc.
Okay.
So that's how a fight is judged by the African Warriors rule set.
By the African Warriors rule
sets,
set.
yes.
Okay. Wow, it's such intriguing sport, and your passion exudes for it. So, what are the hopes and aspirations for African Warriors Fighting Championship and Dambe sports?
Yeah, I mean, to put it simply, we're building Africa's UFC.
Yeah.
The goal is to be Africa's largest dominant combat sports
And you are the
platform.
Dana White, eh?
Dana Black.
Black.
That's very much the goal. That's the goal. Like we, looking at the global combat sports landscape.
Yeah.
The North America has the UFC. Asia has one championship, and Africa has African Warriors. So that's really the goal, is building this into a global powerhouse.
Okay.
Celebrating traditional African combat sports.
Yeah, and I'm sure you'll be taking such events across Nigeria and globally. I believe very soon. What I'm sure you've had your challenges, a lot of it, which we'll be talking about too. But how about the issues of sanctions? Dambe is like the only sport I know, fighting sport I know that it's wraps. It's only the wraps. In fact, before now, I used to think that it was a stone that was inside the big wraps.
To even tell you, just to even interject, right?
Yeah.
Old school Dambe, so before my time, they used to put glass in the wraps.
What's that?
Used to put glass.
Glass?
Yeah. So if you meet Dambe, like a really old Dambe fighter,
wow,
somebody in his like 60s or plus, they have a load of scars on their face from glass. So they stopped doing that, thank God. But yeah, it's not a stone or anything. It's just rope material. It's called kara. That's wrapped very tightly. So it feels like a club, like it feels like a bat. Like I remember one time talking about coronavirus again. I don't know what possessed me to like shadow box with him.
Wow.
Right? So we're just playing, and this was him fight. And bear in mind, I'm like twice the guy's size, right? I'm a big guy, Corona hit me with like a blow that was like a 20% blow, right? Like he really wasn't trying to damage me.
Yeah.
And I remember like rubbing my jaw for hours afterwards. Like
he had the wraps on.
Yeah, he had his wrap on, as in he was getting ready to fight.
Yeah.
And that's even one of the things, right? That there's an intensity of and we need to showcase it more, and people need to see it more in terms of there's like a switch that flips, right?
Yes.
Because Dambe fighters are largely just young guys, right? They're just young dudes who are just like, and they're just having fun, right? So you see them outside of fighting, very chilled, joking, young guys making jokes amongst themselves. And then when they get ready to fight, a switch just flips. Like, you see it in their eyes. Like there's just like, it's like a killer instinct that just comes down. And I think that was the mistake I made, that Corona was very much in that zone
mode,
So it's like, dudes, I don't care if you're paying the checks, man. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's there's there's an intensity in this sport.
How about the myths around it? Like I was going through comments and opinions, like some of them, or some fighters, there is a mystic, there are some extra curricular thing added to their gloves, and just the way you mentioned glass. Yeah,
if you watch a fight, you'll notice most fighters have armbands on.
Yeah.
Most fighters have necklaces on.
Yeah.
Some fighters have different wraps that they position in different places. And the honest truth is, right, this is something that people ask me a lot about. Like, are you going to take out the...
are they charms?
Yes. To put it simply, yes. To put it so it's... Ultimately, this is a sport, right, that is steeped in culture.
Yeah.
So people ask me, are you going to take this out? I'm like, oh, it's not my place to do that. If my job is to ensure everything is fair, right, when stepping on the arena, stepping on the sand. But if it so happens that you believe that you need a certain charm to perform how you want to perform, do what you need to do. If you're watching Muay Thai, you'll notice they do the Y crew before they fight.
Yeah.
So they come out, they dance, they salute their coaches.
Yeah.
I think they pray to the God. Like every
New Zealand
sport,
Aka.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
Every sport has its own cultures and tradition around it.
Yeah.
Dambe fighters are a very superstitious bunch.
Yes.
So I mean, I've had fighters. I know a particular fighter who goes to sleep in a graveyard every night before a big fight. He goes and he sleeps in a graveyard. There's another fighter this is actually a few fighters do this, will carry sand from a graveyard, small bit of sand, rub it on their glove before they compete.
That's to say cute.
Just to say like the energy that these guys are taking into the sport.
Yes, that's intense.
Fighter will disappear for how many days? Where is this guy? Oh, he traveled to deep north to go and visit his malam, to go and get a charm. Like, and all fighters have different.
Is it that serious?
Oh, it's very serious. Like, different fighters will observe different things. There's a particular fighter that won't go anywhere near a woman for 2 weeks before a fight.
Yeah.
I'm not even talking about like abstaining from sex. I'm talking he can't
Nonsense.
be anywhere near close to a woman
Wow.
because he thinks it will interfere with his charm.
Yeah.
So most fighters have their own different particular aspects. Luke, and I keep on bringing it back to Luke just because he's an interesting test case in terms of the first fighter who's not Nigerian, right? So for him, he went to see a malam. He said, like, I want to do everything I can. So we actually shot a documentary. Look out for that. I'll definitely, when we're ready to air it, I'll let you know.
Yes.
Dambe Kudawa. We premiered it to AFRIF, African International Film Festival, last year.
Yeah.
Won a special mention award. And that documentary just delves into Luke competing, right? So getting ready to compete. And as part of it, you have the scene where he goes to a malam. So we're in Katsina, right? And he goes to visit this malam, the house kudu, because different houses have their different malams.
Yeah.
So the elders of House Kudu recommended this particular malam. He goes, he was given a solution to rub over his hand. That solution dyed his hand brown. It was brown for months, right? Dyed his fingernails. And he was given, I can't say all of it thing, but he was just,
Sanctified.
he was really exactly sanctified in it. And as I said,
Did he feel different? Did
he said he felt different. Yeah, he said he felt
Empowered.
it. Yeah, he said he felt something. And you see it, like, if you're ever really close to Dambe fighter,
Yeah.
usually on their punching hands, you'll see loads of little cuts.
Yeah.
So what
Incisions.
happens is, they make little cuts with a razor blade, and then a potion is put inside there, and that's to strengthen their hand.
Yeah.
So it's, the tradition and culture around it is deep.
Yeah.
I think it's very cool.
Yeah.
It's something that just adds an extra layer on top of what is already a very interesting sport.
So sorry to cut you. I wanted to ask this before it goes off my mind. In trying to regulate and structure it, don't you think would there be part of this that would? How do you modernize that art?
Yeah. So for me, modernization is production standards.
Yes.
Is rule set. Is health and safety. Is leveling up production, the arena, ensuring the costuming, all of these things are correct.
Yes.
I'm not here to police anybody's religious beliefs.
Yes.
Me personally, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
But some people are Muslims. Some people observe traditional beliefs.
Yeah.
Some people in Nigeria do a bit of everything.
Yeah.
That's up to you. That's your business. My own thing is, it's not my place to sort of police anybody interacting with the religion of their fathers or grandfathers.
Yeah.
And as I said, I keep on saying it, Dambe is a sport born out of tradition and culture.
Yes.
So for me, I leave that up to them. We give them an even playing field in terms of an arena, in terms of a rule set that aims to keep them as safe as possible.
Yes.
But the actual traditions and beliefs around it, that's a part of the sport. And I'd be pretending if I was saying it's not.
Yes.
And I don't need to pretend.
Yeah.
If you're not interested, don't watch it, you know?
Yeah. So in going forward with it and the advancement of it, the arena which I see is always filled with sand. When Oche was here, he kept calling it pit. The sand pit. I believe that's how. Let's say you now have like a Dambe event in Europe. Would you have to revolve around sand being the arena? How do you go about it?
Why not? Now they get sand for Europe now.
Yeah, but like obviously you want, if you get an arena and let's say like Barclays Center, would the ring be filled with sand also? Like is that the norm of
the Dambe
what
standard?
fight
The
is?
African Warrior standard is a sand pit.
Okay.
Is a raised sand pit, right? That's the standards. So ultimately, that's just an expression of what this sport is.
Yeah.
We did an event once. We got invited to do a boxing event, so we did it in a boxing ring.
Okay.
I just didn't like it. I didn't like seeing Dambe. It didn't seem right. It just didn't seem correct.
Exactly.
So for me, it's in the same way sumo is done on a dedicated arena.
Yeah.
Dambe should, and it deserves its own dedicated arena. So sand is part of it. Sand adds something different to it, because getting your footing on sand is different from getting your footing in an octagon or in a boxing ring.
Yes.
And that's part of it. So yeah, the sand pit is here to stay, for now at least.
Wow. With the introduction, like, I actually salute you, because the African Warriors Fighting Championship is a testament to what resilience can give. And we here also, we have seen what you're doing. It gives us courage that, like, the sky and the peak is our limit. Is our beginning. For you, as the founder of that, what would you like what do you feel that the Nigerian government as a whole, because it seems to be, the North has embraced this, right? If it goes to the eastern part, goes to the western part, we can actually understand it. But I mean, I feel the government has a role to play in a way in the promotion of this. What do you encourage?
I mean, the other week I met the new commissioner of sport.
Yes.
Alhaji Sheudiku, and he was very positive about the future of Dambe.
Yeah.
Obi Asika, the DG of the National Arts and Culture, I forget the exact name. National Council for Arts and Culture.
What did you put out to them?
He's also a big supporter.
Okay.
So for us, right, I think the role government has to play, it's a delicate one in terms of, my main thing, and I think most Nigerian entrepreneurs say it, is just give us an enabling environment.
Yeah.
Give us an enabling environment, recognize what we're doing in terms of, they say Nigerian youth are lazy. We're showcasing that Nigerian youth are certainly not lazy.
Yeah.
We're giving an outlet to protect and preserve and promote a culture.
Yeah.
We are working with, a lot of the time, at-risk communities in some of the most difficult areas to operate in Nigeria. So what I say to government is, at the very least, just give us an enabling environment.
Yeah.
The new chairman of the Sports Commission spoke very highly about the role that he wants sports to play in building Nigeria's economy.
Yeah.
And people really need to understand, and I'm very happy that it feels like government finally gets it, that this isn't just an outlet to keep people busy.
Yeah.
This is a business, and this is something that can contribute a huge amount to Nigeria's economy.
Yes.
So for me, the main thing government can do is just help us unlock that growth.
Yeah.
Support us in that growth. Don't be a barrier to us. If we say we're doing an event, come and support us. We're not even asking for money. Just give us the venue. Help us with security. Ensure that we don't have a problem. Ensure that we don't have random government agencies coming to shake us down asking for their cut.
Yes.
That's all I need. So I think for us, it feels like at least more and more that there are more people in the government who understand that sport is a lever of growth for this country.
Yes.
There are so many different avenues for this, right? It starts with bringing in one fighter from outside of Nigeria. Then you have a group of them. Then it turns into a tourism place. So for us, it's just work with us. We are very confident in the future of this business, future of this sport. And so far, so good, I would say.
Okay. So when is your first event of this year?
Yeah, so next event coming up is end of May. End of May. Yes.
Okay.
We'll announce more soon, but yes,
we would also help in spreading the news.
Yes, please, definitely. I'll keep you posted. You have to come along and watch. You haven't seen Dambe live yet.
Yeah, we're coming.
Well, what's your impression of the sport so far? What do you think?
In fact, I don't know why. Maybe it's the algorithm that brings it in. What it gives to me is massive knockouts, like knockouts that. Yesterday when I was watching some reels of Dambe knockout, I just kept shouting, and my wife was like, what are you watching? I was saying, see, look at what this guy just did to this guy, and you see them just like the knockouts are just different, and it makes me happy because you would see children running around.
It's wild.
Itself.
Yeah, it's crazy. I always say, right, watching a Dambe fight is like waiting for a bomb to go off.
Yes.
Because you can just be there, and a lot of people don't understand the pacing is different to boxing or MMA or something else, in that not all the time things are happening. Things are always happening, but it's not always visible.
Yes.
So if you know what you're looking for, if you're watching leg placement, foot placement, that's a huge thing in Dambe. Foot placement. You'll notice that fighters are constantly trying to move their feet to align themselves.
Yes.
That's because if you can put your feet outside of your opponent and you can give yourself a better angle for your punch, you'll notice hand control is a big thing.
Yes.
So you'll see them trying to hold hands, what people say. That's because if you can keep your opponent's hand engaged, you've got a free space to land that knockout blow.
Yeah.
So there's so many different things at play. You haven't got big gloves to hide behind or to block behind.
Yeah.
So head movement is so much more important.
Yeah.
So it's, as a fan of combat sports, I just love watching it for that reason. And I'm not sure, do you know Robin Black?
No, I don't.
Robin Black, he's a Canadian, I think. Big combat sports analyst.
Okay.
So he does, I think, the commentary for Karate Combat, does commentary, I think, for a few other, I know he was big on Bellator as well.
Okay.
And he does these great breakdowns, right? And he's done a few breakdowns of Dambe, which I think is really important because it showcases the technical side of it.
Yeah.
So he shows like guys cutting angles. He'll slow it down when the guy is setting up for that big punch.
Yes.
And you see things like that. So I think, the knockouts are, it's super exciting.
Do you know something else that gets me? Is the commentators. They hype the movements so much, even in outside. And when he knocks him out, you hear, oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't wait to experience it full hand, please.
It's great.
When we are tagging along in everything, our own aim and purpose here is to every form of martial arts, combat sport, and Nigeria, in the region, in the world, like it's starting from our own Nigeria here, to bring it out to the casuals. Like, I'm a casual, and I know there are a whole lot of people like me that just love anything fighting. Like, I just, in fact, I'm the kind of person that when I see two chickens and fighting, I
stop and watch.
I stop and watch, and I know there are a lot of. So when we have someone like you ingrained in a particular art and sport, we want to hear, and I'm sure this is such an eye opener for us. Well, but I want to ask a last question before we leave, because before we started the show, when I asked you, you told me that I should ask I asked you that when you were young, did you see Dambe, or like what really piqued your interest? Because
no, it's the story I said at the beginning, in terms of just coming and just being met with the spectacle of it.
Yes.
So just coming, seeing the drums, seeing the musicians, seeing the fighters displaying, and then seeing some massive knockouts.
Yeah.
So it was just that first experience is what just lit the flame for me when it comes to Dambe.
Yeah.
As I said, initially we were African Warriors. The vision for it was an MMA organization.
Yeah.
And then on seeing Dambe, I was like, look, man, this is the opportunity to do something totally different.
Yeah.
Radically different. Something that celebrates African Nigerian culture, features these tough fighters coming up. So that's what brought me to Dambe, and it's I've been hooked ever since.
How did you convince your team to see your vision?
I mean, it's funny. I think it took a while. Emmanuel is my right hand man. He's our head of operations, and he is solid, like very, very solid. This is the guy that a lot of the time will go before me in terms of reaching out to new communities, finding new fighters. So he's been to pretty much everywhere across the north in terms of getting really in depth to go and find guys, right? And Emmanuel was very much the first person I shared the vision with, and he very quickly got it. And then just from there, it was just building outwards. It was just bringing on people who saw the opportunity, or at the very least were just excited by it. And so I think it's one of those cases of build it and they will come.
Yeah.
As we started doing it, we started getting people reaching out to us. People who shared the same vision or shared an interest, people coming from it at different angles. Our photographer, for example, Kaide Olua, is one of the best sports photographers, right? And he started as a boxing photographer, and he still does a lot of boxing stuff. But he was just messaged me once out of the blue, was like, hey, can I just want to take some pictures. I said, okay, come along, and he took some pictures, and we've been working together for years since then.
Yeah.
So that's very much the case on how it's been with everybody.
Yeah.
People have just experienced it either through our content, through watching it. A lot of the time, somebody's like, oh, I used to watch Dambe growing up in the north or whatever. And yeah, it's just people just come. People seek us out. I'm always on the lookout for people who have a skill set that's complementary, because there are many different parts. You don't necessarily need to be in the field with us, watching the fights.
Yes.
You might be well placed in terms of having conversations with partners, with sponsors.
Yeah.
We did a big deal with Stake.com, which was the first of its kind. Stake.com being one of the biggest global sponsors of sport. We brought them to Africa as their first partner on the continent.
Wow.
Right?
That's amazing.
Thank you. And that's just an example of there are many different skill sets at place. I think people just see African Warriors and just see fighting and think that's all we do.
Yeah.
Of course, fighting is the product, that's the content we put out and produce, but ultimately there's so many different parts of it. There's business development, there's partnerships, there's media production. So we're just getting started. We're just getting started.
And as we said before the show, 20 plus years from now, we'll be talking about where we are and how the journey has been.
Hopefully so. I tap into that.
And well, I still have a whole lot to talk about, but our producer is already telling us we're out of time. And I can't thank you enough, Maxwell, for coming here.
Thank you.
Taking your time to come here. I mean, for people out there, like casual like me, that just like UFC fights and AQ, it's your chance to tell them something, please.
I would say just look in. If you are a fan of combat sports, even if you're not a fan of combat sports, if you just want to see something exciting, something that celebrates Nigeria, celebrates Africa, get on board. African Warriors Fighting Championship. We're taking African fighting global. We are the home of Dambe. You can follow us across social media at African Warriors FC, Instagram, TikTok, African Warriors Fighting Championship, Facebook, YouTube. My personal platform is at MK_AWFC. So just lock in. We have so much coming. 2025 is going to be a super exciting year for us. So yeah, just get ready. Join the train.
Yeah, and guys, as you heard it, me personally now, I'm not ardent Dambe fan. When the event is up, we will be broadcasting it everywhere on all our platforms. We are going to watch, and it's going to be a big time for us. Guys, thank you for watching, and thank you, Max, for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Guys, our time is up, and it's a wrap here.